I love mornings.
That's good. Ready for another week?
I think
You're
I
getting
am.
towards the end of it, aren't you?
Sometime soon.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's 8:01. Let's go ahead and kick off our final third house session. I can't believe it's the last day of February. We're in short session this year, which means there's still a lot of work to do. Looks like well over 100 bills still active. So we're excited to talk with Senator Walker and Representative Lauer today. And we have special guests from ABC Stewart, the elementary school. So there they are waving. They come well prepared, and we'll get to them in just a minute. Today, just a reminder, the Chamber has been providing this forum for decades, and we think it's important that people engage with their civic life and with their elected officials. And we're really proud of our tradition with Third House. We're not here to endorse bills or candidates. We're just here to have a good discussion. This is our last session, and we will record the session and make it available to anyone who was not able to attend. We've got some important issues to weigh in on. I want to ask both Senator Walker and Representative Lauer to do a short intro. And when you do, tell us the tone in the State House. I'm wondering if there's still a high level of activity, visitors, lobbyists, events, or have things quieted down since the pre-COVID days? Or do you seeing the same level of activity as in years past? Representative Lauer, why don't you kick us off today?
Thank you, Cindy, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate the time to have these discussions. They're so beneficial. And to the ABC students, hello, good morning. How are you? The question on the tone of the State House, I think it's positive. We have certainly debates, and that's the function of our representative democracy. And most of our bills, however, 85% or more, are bipartisan. We work together, we work across the aisle. We work to improve bills as they go through the process. So right now we're getting close to the home stretch where all the bills have been passed in the House, all the bills have passed in the Senate initially, and then we swap bills to debate and work on each other's bills. So we've been hearing Senate bills in our committees and taking action, changing them if we think they should be changed, and then we will go into a process that's already started, but to negotiate and to work together with our Senate partners to come to hopefully a mutual agreement on things. Or this is also the time when bills are dying and go back into the desks, you know. So I would say things are very positive. You know, we've had a year much different than last year. We were not in the state capitol. We actually met in one of the government buildings across the street, which had a larger room and a much different feel. This year, we've all of our committees and our session has been open to the public. So we've had a good attendance, I think, in our committee hearings, and on certain bills, you know, that come through have gotten attention. People show up, and I think that's a good thing. And we're, you know, feeling pretty much back to normal.
Good to hear. Thank you, Representative Lauer. Senator Walker, would you like to give us some opening remarks, weigh in?
Good morning, Cindy. The State House is always busy with lobbyists. They never slow down. But I would say, in agreement with Ryan, that we've had a lot of guests in the building. It's been very cordial. I've enjoyed many exchanges. ABC Stewart did have a younger class come visit me while I was presenting in committee last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago now, and it was pretty hectic, but we got a chance to talk for a little while. I would say that this is also that period of time when tensions that arise due to disagreements on how bills should travel through the process begin to show themselves. Bills don't get a hearing that otherwise might have under different circumstances, maybe depending upon who filed the bill. And there have been a couple of those moments where I just sort of blink and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, because personalities get involved, and it's always difficult and challenging when you have personalities that begin to rub one another. And there's good policy that should be moving forward. There's bad bills that should be getting killed. But when those personalities get involved, it always creates an additional layer of challenge to following the process. Often, many times, those bill concepts will be attempted to be inserted in other living or live bills. We call them other moving bills, those still available for action in the process. That's happening to bills I'm involved with right now. It's happening to all kinds of bills, to where bits and pieces, parts and portions, or entire language from one bill is being inserted into another in an attempt to keep the process forward. So it's always very difficult to know what it is you're voting for if you're not paying attention, because you can have the same number it had last week, but the content may be significantly changed. So it's time to stay awake, drink the coffee, and do a lot of reading and listening.
Thank you, Senator Walker, for that overview. I have a question for you, and it's about House Bill 1001. Representative Lauer is a co-author on this bill. There's a lot to unravel here. It speaks to administrative authority and COVID, immunizations in the workplace. It details out who has what authority in situations like the one we've been in during COVID, whether it's the Secretary of Family and Social Services, or the commissioner, I should say, or the governor, or the director of the state health department. So can you talk to us about this bill 1001 and where you stand?
So I think the bill is a look back at how we experienced COVID. I still assert, and will continue to assert, that we need one executive branch and not three in order to manage exceptions to the rule in a COVID or any emergency situation. I think that the focus on the bill has been on employee protections, and it inserts state government in a new way into this process that I don't think really has any single parallel. The closest I ever think of is the requirement to wear hard hats and steel-toed shoes in a workplace. Employees don't get to opt in or out of that kind of language. That's federal language, which further entangles this bill. And I think it does so in a fatal manner. Indiana Constitution says there to be no privileges or immunities to any class of persons that, under the same circumstances, don't apply to all people. And we've got carve outs for entertainment and pro sports, so that under their contract, they may require certain testing, certain vaccination expectations that Indiana would say otherwise. No, you can't do that, except it's pro sports, and we don't want to interrupt the schedules of the pro teams coming and going to our state. The bill has other exemptions, or exceptions, I should say, for healthcare workers that may fall under federal rules regarding anything with Medicaid reimbursement and the service provided. So the bill does not provide the same immunities and protections across the board. It has to pick and choose, because we're getting uh, into a very small space between what the federal government has already mandated. And agree, I will say, I don't agree with federal mandates on workplace rules. OSHA has been around a long time, but I don't really see that as an authorized vehicle of the federal government. I think that should be under state regulation as far as workplace safety, to be honest with you. But having said that, even our Supreme Court and its current makeup has upheld these rules. And so federal rules are going to preempt the Indiana state law. And I can't find a place for this bill in the middle of that conflict between jurisdiction. And importantly, that puts state employees at a real difficulty in trying to reconcile the federal requirements and the state requirements. And I just don't want to do that to our employers. I have been told that this bill wouldn't affect a handful of companies these days. There are not that many non-health related industries that are mandated a vaccine. It's very rare. And so I think there's more show than go in this bill, but its constitutional limitations just have gotten me to a place where I can't support the current language of the bill.
I understand that Governor Holcomb had some things he wanted to see changed. Have those things made it into the bill?
I honestly don't know if those things made it into the bill or not. I don't know if he was looking at, I mean, the most recent changes were contracts with sport teams or entertainment from out of state.
It didn't
That's
look,
the most.
it didn't look
Go
like
ahead.
it gutted at all.
No, I wouldn't say the bill's been gutted. That's the only change I'm aware of in the last week to the bill language that really comes to mind.
All right. Hey, thank you. I'm gonna go to our kids because I know they've got lots of questions. ABC Stewart kids, students, I should say. What question? Who's going to be the brave one, the first to ask a question? Okay, speak up.
Hello, and thank you for your time. My question is pertaining to the Senate Bill 17. Why are they removing the quote unquote harmful materials from the libraries when for some ages they might need the information from those books for school, their jobs, their personal life, and they don't have any other resources to go to or use?
Who would you like to tackle that one? Representative Lauer.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for being interested in some of the bills being debated and sent to our desk to decide whether these are good ideas to legislate or need to be changed. So your question on Senate Bill 17, that started in the Senate, came over to the House. I don't see that bill moving or I should say getting to a vote in the House. However, the language of the bill as it stands does not change the standard for what is considered in current law harmful to minors. There are materials, books that are for adults only, and we want to make sure that our school libraries have age-appropriate materials. I think Senator Walker and I really dug into our libraries here and our school processes as to how books are selected, and if there's a process for people to object or to if they find something that they find objectionable that's not age appropriate, to have a process to discuss that within the library and remove it. And what I came about with that, talking with a lot of different people involved, from librarians to teachers to administrators, was that we have a very strong process here to make sure that our books and materials are age appropriate for kids. And then, you know, the books that are meant for adults are treated that way. So I think everything is going to be fine with the way that we're doing things now with our libraries. And back to your question on the bill, I don't expect us to be passing that bill as it currently stands.
Thank you. Back to our students. Do we have another question?
What is the current percentage of vaccinated Hoosiers? And do you expect Hoosiers to resist or be on board with the passage of Bill 1001?
Well, we can go back to Senator Walker for that.
Well, I tell you, I'm not sure how to answer your question. What I understand from House Bill 1001 is that it may change the course of decision making for folks who may still not have been vaccinated, but an employer would suggest they should be vaccinated. But from what I've seen outside of Indiana in terms of that conversation, new vaccinations, that is people who are deciding more than a year after the creation of the vaccination, has trickled down to where most of the clinics now are seeing almost zero new vaccinations. So folks are still getting their boosters. People are still seeking the vaccination, but for those who have never been vaccinated, there are almost no people looking to be vaccinated. So I would say whether that bill passes or not, we probably won't see much difference in uptake to those individuals who have made a determination they don't want to be vaccinated. I'm not a scientist and I'm not a doctor, but I'm going off what I've heard and read on some national media regarding a person's individual choice and the reasons why they choose not to be vaccinated probably will not change under this bill. You may have some that would feel they are it's necessary they be vaccinated if an employer requires it. But I mentioned earlier, there are almost no employers requiring it outside of those in healthcare. And again, I don't think you're going to see much change in how the vaccination is being received. That's just my thoughts on it. I may be wrong, but it's a good question.
Thank you.
All right, students, I've lost you now. There you are. What other questions do you have?
My question is pertaining to House Bill 1134. I would like to know what your opinion on this bill is.
And who would you like to direct that to?
Senator Greg Walker.
All right.
All right. Well, I thank you for the question. I've given that bill a lot of thought and I've watched it change significantly in the process. It was amended 2 different occasions within the Education Committee. I'm not a member of that committee, but I've been watching the language that comes out of there. And I think much of the more aggressive language has been removed from the bill. But I'll just leave you one thing to consider. There's still language that talks about 3 specific topics that are not eligible for discussion. And someone said to me, no, I think we all agree that these are subjects we probably don't want taught in schools. And it has to do with, and I'll just read them so I don't mess it up. One group is inherently superior or inferior to another. One group should be treated adversely or preferentially. And then the third topic we can't discuss is individuals by virtues of their traits are inherently responsible for the past actions of others who share their traits. Now, you and I could probably sit down with that list of 3 bullet points and discuss whether or not those are topics that are not available discussion. And maybe we will agree. But I guess the part that still really bothers me is that we're trying to set a precedent that state lawmakers know how to intervene in a classroom conversation and determine that these topics are off limits. What happens when this bill, if it passes, is amended 2 years later and a 4th off limit topic is added, and then a 5th, and then a 6th, and then a 10th. And who decides what that list looks like? Well, right now it's the General Assembly. So maybe I'd like bullet point 4 to be the classroom shall never talk badly about their state senator. You cannot have that conversation in a classroom. Well, maybe I like that bullet point, maybe you don't, but I'm really uncomfortable with the idea of we all agree, because at some point we'll begin, even if we did agree today, and I'm not saying we do, but if we did, at some point we would have some things of which we don't all agree upon that would be suggested as this is language that's banned from the classroom. So I still struggle with getting over that single hurdle. And as a result, I do believe that the tools to have conversations between parents and teachers should be and is being utilized in our public schools. If for some reason those tools are not getting us to the resolution we want, then principals need to get involved, then superintendents need to get involved, then school boards need to get involved, in that order. And if that still doesn't bring resolution, the bill says we go to the Department of Education. You've already bypassed now elected officials, locally elected officials on your school boards. So if it's a public school. So I don't see how we're going to improve the process by giving you 1 more or 2 more degrees of resolution seeking. If you can't seek it within the building and within the school system, I don't think you're going to get a resolution anywhere. And that's why Indiana does have a strong support for educational choice of parents. If you can't get resolution in your classroom, in your building, or in your school system, sometimes we have in this country what are called irreconcilable differences, and we might refer to those in a marital situation as a divorce. And I say sometimes people just need to get a divorce. They're just not working together, and it's time to regroup and move along. It's regrettable. It's unfortunate when that happens, but I think the tools should be kept at the local level, and I don't think that we can improve this process by mandating curriculum review boards or whatever might still be in the bill. I think we've got enough local control to take care of these issues.
Representative Lauer, you've addressed this bill in the past, and I know you won't have an opportunity to vote on it, but would you like to share your views with the students?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the question. We do a lot on education bills up at the State House. Over 50% of all the money, all the taxes that come into Indiana goes to K through 12 education. And if you add our universities, it goes up to 2/3 or 66% of all the money. So the subject of education is always at the forefront to make sure that the kids in our communities have good quality schools, and we work together to try to find the right balance between administrations, teachers, and parents. So 1134, one of the main ideas behind it is to involve our parents more into the process of education. So in the bill, it creates what used to be for many decades, 50 years or so, we used to have these in Indiana, but what are called parent or curriculum advisory boards, which would include parents. So parents would be involved in reviewing the things that you'll be learning in school, and then maybe having their own ideas, some textbook ideas or ideas to bring in new topics of interest or whatever. And the important thing is that parents are involved in our schools. Now, the advisory committee that's set up in 1134 is not binding. That means it's just an advisory. They're just making suggestions. The school board, which is the elected officials that make decisions about our schools, our public schools, they would have the final say as to those recommendations. So the parent and teacher advisory boards would work together to review the things that you're learning, your textbooks and other materials, and then they would present that to the school board, and the school board would make their own decisions. So today that process really happens with the superintendent, and 1134 is bringing parents into that process. Now, so you know, here at BCSC and our schools and our community, parents are involved in various subcommittees and committees in this same process. Another part of the bill makes sure that parents have access to the things that you're learning in school. And for most of our public students here in Bartholomew County and Columbus, parents are used to that. We have a portal at BCSC that parents can log into and find materials and lessons and homework. I know everyone loves homework on the call here, but I think it's so important that our parents, that we allow our parents to be involved in our schools and partner with our community to really do the best that we can to get a quality education for our kids. So those are the main components of the bill. Senator Walker talked about some of the other components of not teaching things that divide us. So for example, you would not, and I don't see our schools doing that here, but an example would be if you're teaching that boys are better than girls. You know, life is more complex than that. We all are individuals that have our own strengths, and grouping people together and pitting them against each other is something that shouldn't be in our schools, and that's another part of the bill that is debated, and we've been going back and forth to figure out what's the best way to address that particular situation. And so as the process goes, we're debating, we're going through different changes, and the Senate's doing that process right now, and we'll see how the bill comes back over to the House, and I'm expecting that we'll continue to have that discussion.
Thank you, Representative Lauer. And since we have Dr. Roberts on the call, I might just ask if he wants to elaborate on what those feedback loops are. You mentioned that we have a lot of really outstanding ways that parents can have input. Dr. Roberts, would you like to just elaborate on that a bit?
I can, Cindy, thanks. And I think that each school corporation in the state has some way of engaging parents, whether it be in some complaint resolution situation and or whether it's in the selection of curriculum materials and items and so forth. So in our school corporation, we have multiple committees that meet routinely, at least quarterly, to go over everything from, I use our diversity council, our buildings and grounds facilities committee, our business advisory committee, each of those made up of parents and community members. Our CCIC, which is our continuous improvement council, that kind of governs the continuous improvements efforts we have. In each of our school buildings, we have CICs, or continuous improvement councils, that then feed back up to the CCICs. We have textbook adoption committees and other curriculum review opportunities that again engage both educators and community and parents in the process. From a complaint standpoint, we do, and Senator Walker kind of acknowledged this earlier, that if there is an issue or a situation that needs to be addressed, We have a process for doing that, and we first ask people to take it to the individuals closest to the situation. So if there's something happening in the classroom, the teacher's probably the best one to talk to first. And then if there's no resolution, then how do you go from there? It would be up to, to the principal, to my office, whether it's director of secondary education, director of elementary education, or me, and then eventually to our school board. And there certainly is that opportunity to appeal and formally go through a complaint process, fill out forms, and eventually appeal to our school board and have a meeting with our school board if something like that is needed. So I think those things are in place. I think at this point in time, the Senate has done some things that makes the bill a little less, I won't use the word harmful. We can get through whatever is given to us, but it took maybe some of the edge off of the initial bill. But still, I see it as a bill that's unnecessary for the things that we already have in place and the challenges that we're trying to address.
Thank you. I've got a question for Senator Walker, and then we'll get back to the students at ABC Stewart. Sorry, I keep calling you kids, students. And this is about House Bill 1077. It relaxes permitting for handguns for most people. And it seems to be gathering a lot of support in the Senate, but our top Republican law enforcement officer, State Police Superintendent Doug Carter, has spoken against this bill. Senator Walker, where do you stand on 1077?
That's a great question. Where do I stand on this bill, Cindy? It's been amended now in such a manner that it was a strip and insert in the Judiciary Committee to where, based on our calendar, that was a unlawful act by our own rules. So based on the calendar, the only means by which that bill can move forward is for the content to be assigned to a new bill number and a hearing to be scheduled in Rules Committee, probably. There was a lot of testimony on the bill before that amendment, which kept the requirement to have a permit to carry a handgun, but created a new temporary allowance for carrying a handgun while the application for the permit was being processed through the state police. And that did pass out of committee. So we'll see that again debated under a new bill number. So 1077 becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. And I'm still looking for what is the actual public policy of this bill. And I say that because for 99% maybe or more, or maybe some less, percentage of those individuals who want to see this passage, and that is a permitless carry, these citizens of Indiana will still keep their concealed carry permit, whether an Indiana issued permit or an out-of-state issued permit, for the purpose of reciprocity for when they travel to other states. Many people, I'll say at least I know of individuals who have a lifetime concealed carry permit and don't carry a handgun, but they have it because they can, I suppose, or because it's a way of saying that my constitutional right to carry is being exercised. I'm not exactly sure of the motivation sometimes. So what changes? The state police argue, or excuse me, law enforcement in general has argued that this removes a tool for them to determine whether you have someone who has a lawful permission to carry or no lawful permission to carry while out there in a situation where a handgun may be involved. I honestly don't understand, if I was a law enforcement officer and I was in a situation that was feeling as though it was escalating and someone may have a firearm on their person, I don't think I'd feel any more comfortable about that escalation if that person had a permit or did not have a permit to carry. I don't think that adds any layer of safety or assurance to a law enforcement officer. So I don't understand that argument either. So I'm left with what is the hole in our public policy that we're trying to fix? And I'm struggling to find what that is. So that's where I am on the bill. I suspect that I really don't see that it makes a lot of difference either way. It seems to be important to a good section of the Indiana population that this language pass so that we have permitless carry. And I agree with the proponents of the bill that if it has a handgun for an unlawful purpose, I don't think that not having a permit is going to slow them down from committing that unlawful act. If they want to use it to intimidate or to harm someone, the fact they don't have a permit is probably the least concern on their list of concerns that day. And I don't see that as really being any kind of deterrent. So I'm not certain what public policy problem we're trying to fix, because even if the bill passes, no one has to surrender their current license, their current permit, I should say. So I've been asking that question. I've been given one answer that may have some credibility that I'm not going to go into with you. I'm still debating that for myself as to why I should support the bill. But I expect that we'll see that 1077 in its new form continue to move through the Senate process and be returned to the House. Now I still question as to whether there have been any changes in the bill or will be changes in the bill that put us in disagreement with the House author on content. That's yet to be seen, but that's just one where I'm just kind of trying to understand what is the real concern or what is the real driver behind this bill on both sides of the issue. So I just feel like I'm missing a critical element to understanding why this is such a big topic of conversation. Maybe I'm just dumb and naive, but I'm still looking for that missing piece.
Thank you so much. All right, back to Ms. Stappert's class. Who's our next victim? All right.
Thank you. I'm also talking about House Bill 1134. What if the parents or guardians are the reason the student needs support? Wouldn't it be best for school counselors to assess the need before seeking consent?
All right, this is a different aspect of that bill. And since it's coming to the Senate, I guess we'll start with Senator Walker.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I have seen that the bill has been amended such that the bill states there's no intention for parental permission be granted for emergency situations in a student who has some sort of emergency matter that needs direct attention. Permission does not have to be sought in those cases. There's another provision regarding just the day-to-day conversations. So I hope and I know that many of you have relationships with your teachers that are more than just the subject matter in that classroom, and that you can confide in that teacher, and hopefully they know how to help you with advice and seeking good counsel from your parents or from others that you trust. And the bill tries not to insert itself in that kind of conversation. So that's the attempt of the bill. Now, remember, I'm still struggling as to why I would support the bill to begin with, but I think that the focus then really comes to what about, I think there is a ban or a prohibition on anyone who would use a survey that might assess the mental well-being of a student from being paid for by a third party and being used in the school. And I think there are also attempts to control the data that might be generated by that student, and no individual student answers should ever be revealed to a third party or to anyone outside of just using them in aggregate or scientific research purposes. So I think it's trying to walk a fine line and say parents should know what kind of questions their students are being asked. And I think it's trying to drill down specifically to surveys or questionnaires, as opposed to conversations that may happen more organically or just more as a result of the circumstances in the class or what's on the students' minds, these kind of things. So to me, it's a little hard to follow what all that current bill language impacts, but that's my understanding of it.
Representative Lauer, do you want to weigh in on that? You've been supportive of this bill.
Sure, yeah. So nothing in the bill stops kids from talking to their teachers, for confiding in their teachers, in emergency situations, or unfortunately, there are kids that experience abuse at home, and we need to protect those kids. And so the bill doesn't do anything to prevent teachers from doing that. In fact, we have strong laws on the books today as a shall report state, where if a teacher or a guidance counselor or a principal hears from a student that there's abuse going on, they are required by law to report that, and none of those laws are affected by this bill. So when you start getting into long-term counseling, when you start getting into mental health treatment for kids, and in many cases very important, but we want to have the parents involved in those decisions. So that's really where the bill focuses on. And we want to make sure that that services like that are and that there are regular services for mental health, especially, that parents should be involved in medical decisions for their children. And so that's where that bill is going. If you don't mind, Cindy, I'd like to jump back briefly on the 1077 bill.
Sure.
Yeah, so that was a great question from another student. From the House perspective and from the original bill that was sent over, we like to refer to this as lawful carry. And so everybody knows, 21 states today already have this on the books. States like Missouri, Kentucky, Iowa, Vermont. And what it says is that it's not a crime if you're an upstanding, lawful citizen, you haven't broken the rules, you haven't committed crimes, and that you would normally be able to carry a firearm. This bill just enshrines the constitutional ability for our citizens to own a firearm. And it does not remove the permitting process. You can still get a permit, because if you travel out of state, you want to be able to show that you have that you're permitted in Indiana, for instance. But there are other policy parts of this bill that are very important, I believe. One of those is, I think Senator Walker referred to it, but criminals, they get guns illegally, right? They don't follow the rules. And what we're doing in this bill is increasing the penalties for illegal guns, for criminals that use guns illegally. So we're up in the jail time for people who commit crimes with illegal firearms. And I think that's important to mention as well. So there are certainly citizens that have found that it takes months, and especially during COVID, to get a permit when they might have a situation in their lives where they feel threatened, or they have a need to go out and purchase a firearm to protect their homes and their families, and that's allowed in Indiana. We're just allowing citizens to not have to go through the paperwork if they haven't committed crimes, and they're lawfully allowed to carry a firearm. So I just wanted to add that in there, and thank you for the question too.
All right, students, let's have another question.
My question is, how can we mitigate the risk of cybersecurity attacks in the light of current geopolitical circumstances around the world?
Ryan, you're a IT guy. You want to start with that?
Yes, you're exactly right, that cybersecurity is a absolute necessity these days. And as you probably have seen on the news, we have Russia invading another country right now. And cybersecurity, cyber attacks have been a part of that. And we need to be able to defend ourselves, not only in Indiana and our citizens, but our country. And these days, there are so many things that computers control, that can have safety implications if you're getting attacked through the cyber world, whether it's the electrical grid or gas transportation, or stealing our private personal information. All of these things happen. So a number of things that we do in Indiana, in fact, you may not know this, and we worked on this for a number of years, but here very close to us is Fort Muscatatuck, and they have a cyber defense program. It's a boot camp that as young students, you might even look into in the future. But you go in and you spend many weeks, I think 12, 16
7.
weeks. Yeah, quite a few months, living on the military base, learning the tools of our very advanced military capabilities in cyber warfare and defense. And it's so important to be able to identify when we have attacks coming in the cyber world, because unlike the war that we're seeing over in Russia's aggression on Ukraine, the cyber attacks could happen in your living room, right? And we also have nefarious actors and criminals that come in and try to scam people. You may know somebody that got scammed by someone online, and that's a real problem. We're going to continue to get smarter and harden our systems to be able to prevent those types of attacks, especially attacks on our infrastructure. But there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and a lot of Hoosiers are involved in our national strategy here in our neighborhood, fighting those nefarious actors and those nation states who would attack us on the cyber field. So very important, and thanks for asking or bringing that up.
Do we have another student with a question?
So my question is, since Indiana State has removed their mask mandates, how do we know that there won't be another variant or another wave of COVID cases?
Senator Walker, would you like to talk about
My
that?
turn. Yeah, well, there's no way of knowing that, is there? Of course, we are constantly looking at the source of the infections right now. There's testing to determine what variant has been moving through the population. We can see that most recently, one of the variants has kind of exhausted itself, and that either you've been vaccinated or you've probably been exposed and have natural immunity now. Great majority of Hoosiers just are not going to be that susceptible to the most recent variant, but there's no assurance. It's why we need to continue to have policies that allow us to react to emergency situations. I'm going to say that the executive branch has to be the branch of action. You've been talking to a couple legislators. We can't get anything done without disagreeing about it for months at a time. So we don't respond well to emergencies, and we need to empower those that have our public safety in mind as their sole responsibility to respond in an emergency. I don't know what the next variant looks like, and I don't know that we have one, but it doesn't have to be just COVID-19. That can be from a million different viruses. As far as I understand the way viruses work, they share and exchange DNA with their host. They're interesting creatures that scientists can't tell us if they're actually living organisms or they're dead. So they have unique characteristics and they can wreak havoc. We just have to be responsive to what we see and try to get ahead of anything that becomes a threat to our citizens.
Representative Lauer, would you like to respond?
Sure, yeah, so that's correct. We do not have a mask mandate at the State House. And I saw recently that our public schools here have relaxed the mask mandates at our schools here. And, there's all sorts of ways to protect yourself from transmission and or getting viruses. I know you've learned this in school. Wash your hands. Be aware if you're sick. Stay home. Ask your parents. I don't feel so well today. Take your temperature. There are things like that that are very tried and true for our communities, and for your own personal health. But I will say, and I do want to emphasize that from all the data that I see every day, we're definitely on the tail end of the downswing of this latest variant. Thank God. This latest Omicron and Omicron version 2 are looking to be, and the data has shown to be much more mild in creating disease and death than the original versions. Especially the younger folks have very little chance of ending up in the hospital. When you look at the prevalence of the Omicron variant. So I think working together and making sure that you're talking with your parents and your family if you're not feeling well, and just being smart about, if you have a friend at school that's coughing and sneezing, maybe not share your milk with them, right? But I don't think at this point you need to worry about worry about getting in the hospital. I think just be healthy. Take a second look at what you're eating for lunch. Get your vitamins, get your vegetables and fruits, get a good night's sleep, and your body and God has given us quite an amazing immune system that works very well, and even on the Omicron seems to work very well as well. So, we're coming up into the spring and the summer, be able to get outside more, and hopefully we'll have this all behind us when we come in next year for school. And that's what I hope for and pray for as well.
Thank you. Thank you, students. We always appreciate having your involvement in these sessions, and you always come with good questions. We really appreciate you. Senator Walker, any predictions when this session might end? You're winding down.
Well, it could end today. I wouldn't complain too much, but the truth is, we don't have a budget to pass. So all of the bills are emergency acts because the off session is an emergency session, as we've talked about. All the bills have the following acts shall be declaration of emergency. But we talk a lot about how we don't want to live under emergencies, but every single bill we file this session is an emergency act. Just reminding people. What we've got left to manage and the path that most things are taking, I think you're going to see that the conference reports are going to continue to come forward at a more rapid pace. My expectation will be there'll be a handful, maybe just 2 or 3 sort of the most contentious bills will finish up. And when we get to that point of a conference report on 2 or 3 of our major bills outstanding, we'll probably call it a day. So there will be a scramble if your bill is not making headlines to get that across the desk. It is a second reading deadline today in the Senate for all House bills. And I have one on the calendar that I'm hoping to get across. It's a good bill for the Department of Child Services. The agency has requested these items. And so guys like me who don't have their bills on the front page are working furiously. I think we probably will get done sooner than the deadline. Some have said a whole week sooner, but I never hold my breath when they start talking about that.
It's almost 9 o'clock. Representative Lauer, any predictions when you might be done?
Oh, I think constitutionally the date is March 14th or somewhere around there where we have to be done. I'm expecting us to wrap up much earlier than that. But as Senator Walker said, we don't know. There's all sorts of things going around. I have a bill going through the Senate. I think is on 3rd reading soon. And thank you, Senator Walker, for your support in bringing transparency and helping to highlight abused kids. That's very important. And yeah, as Senator Walker said, not everything hits the front page, but we work really hard up there. I thought, for the students, especially ABC, there's a bill you may not be aware of that, I'm looking, make sure Senator Walker, see what he's going to do with it. But House Bill 1013 brings an official state fossil to name an official state fossil for Indiana. And can anyone guess what that might be? Well, it turns out that way back,
Me. I thought about amending the bill and just putting my name in there, but I didn't do it.
Oh, that'd be special legislation, I think, Senator
That
Walker.
probably would be.
But 100 million plus years ago, the mastodon, the giant animal, was roaming here in Indiana, and we found hundreds of mastodons, I believe, or parts of them all over the state. And we are talking about that as our new state fossil. We don't have a state official fossil, and many of you may not know that the mastodon roamed Indiana many years ago. And so that's a little bit of interesting tidbit on one of the bills that doesn't get a lot of front page attention, but something I'm looking very, very closely at Senator Walker to see what he's going to do. Thank you very much for having me this morning.
Well, I want to, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, thank Senator Walker and Representative Lauer for their participation. We've been doing these since the end of January, and we're so grateful for your time and your candor. And for those who've joined us on the call, thank you for your interest. Until next year, we'll call this to close. Thank you all.
Thank you, Cindy.
Have a great
Thank you, Sydney.
day.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
you.
students. Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
See y'all.
Have a good day.
You too.